Yeah, well, one must stay entertained. So, Marcus, do you know what's going on in the Middle East right now?
I think same shit, different day.
Once again, folks, yes, the voice behind the camera is once again horribly misinformed on just about everything that's going on in this world, but then again, he is 21. But he's one hell of a geek god, so that's why I keep him around. All right, once again, we are doing the events of the last week. I'm going over things that, some that I've already talked about, and some that are a little new to the rant. Anyway, I want to start. I did a video this week about food aid donations into the African nations that are war torn, and the lack of impact it's had on improving anything. And I was stating also the obvious fact that most of these donations go into the hands of the people who are ruling these war-torn nations and killing their civilian population. So none of the food actually gets down to the people who are starving. Wow, big surprise. Anyway, article from AP from, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Catherine Auereld. She went on to say, some of the World Food Program supplies went to the black market, some to feed livestock. One warehouse full of rations was looted in its entirely by a Somali government official. And across the city, feeding sites handing out less food than records indicate they should. Whoa, stop the presses, folk. Corruption within the food donation process in an African nation, this time Somali. Well, she goes on to say later in her article, she backs up my claim, she's wondering if we're doing the right thing, because let's face it, the only people profiting from this are, guess what, the profiteers. The very people we want out of government and out of the way of these people, the same people that are murdering hundreds of thousands, the same people that are putting guns into 10-year-old soldiers' hands, those are the people who are profiting from our donations. So, food for thought. And that was meant to be ironic. Then I wanted to get on to Goldman Sachs executive Greg Smith, who resigned in a flurry of accusations about his company. Wow, what a surprise. We're hearing about their predatory nature and how they don't give a shit about their investors. Whoa, stop the presses again. Here's what he says in his resignation. Today is my last day at Goldman Sachs. After almost 12 years at the firm, first as a summer intern while at Stanford, then in New York for 10 years, and now in London, I believe I have worked here long enough to understand the trajectory of its culture, its people, and its identity. And I can honestly say that the environment now is as toxic and destructive as I have ever seen it. He went on to add, how did we get here? The firm changed the way it thought about leadership. Leadership used to be about ideas, setting an example and doing the right thing. Isn't that that's what my generation was raised on, trying to do the right thing. Wow, what a foreign concept in today's financial markets. And he went on to say, today, if you make enough money for the firm, and in parentheses, and are not currently an axe murderer, end quote, you will be promoted into a position of influence. All right, the surprise of all this is not the fact that we had an executive from the inside out, one of these financial monsters. The surprise to me is it's the first time we're hearing this from a culture that's been going on for the last decade at least. So you got to think about the hundreds of thousands of investors within these financial institutions that don't give a fuck about doing the right thing. We got one guy, and that's a little bit too late. But it does give validity, and it probably gives more room for Occupy Wall Street to continue their movement. Let's hope they can get their shit together and actually make some hay out of this particular situation. All right, and then there's the idea of bombing Iran. This is an interesting thing I came up with over the last couple of days when I did my last rant on us ramping up to bomb the nuclear facilities there, whether it be us or Israel that does it. News of note, we are sending over 4 minesweepers to the Persian Gulf. And to forward deploy these minesweepers, they're coming out of San Diego. They got to be put on heavy lift ships, and it's going to take them weeks to get to the Gulf. Well, that's a build-up, folks. We're getting ready. And the question is, are we getting ready to support Israel, or are we going to go in ahead of Israel? That's a fact. But the thing that I wanted to address was the political rhetoric that's going back and forth between Iran and the United States for the last 40 years has done more to drive up oil prices worldwide than the actual supply and demand issue. Because let me tell you right now, since 2008, demand for oil has decreased because the economy hasn't had such a need. Well, prices are at historic highs because one day Iran in January says, we're going to go after any aircraft carriers, we're going to close the Straits of Hormuz, oil prices spike. The United States doesn't react for a month or two, and then out of the blue, Obama says, we're not bluffing. Oil prices spike again. This has been going on for decades. Well, it seems to me that particular game's being played out, and with demand depressed, and with the turmoil in the Middle East, the United States and Israel will not find a better time to go ahead and get rid of this particular problem. So I'm thinking within the next 3 to 4 months, we're going to, like I said, see $6 to $7 a gallon for gas at the pumps, because they're going to bomb Iran unless that government goes through a radical shift. And I don't know about you, but I don't see it coming out of out of Khomeini. So then the last thing I wanted to talk about tonight was U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Robert Bales. He's the man that's been accused of the massacre in Afghanistan where 16 civilians were killed. One of the things that got me also further looking into what's really going on in Afghanistan is an interesting figure of over 3,000 Afghani civilians were killed within the last year in country. And you've got to start comparing this to Vietnam. In Vietnam, we didn't know who the enemy was. When our troops went into a village, it was either the Viet Cong, the North Vietnamese regulars, or it was the good guys. And after a while, being surprised and having unpleasant surprises like having children come out and throw grenades at them, they took the attitude of, we're just going to kill everybody now and sort it out later, which led to things like My Lai. We're seeing the same thing in Afghanistan. They don't like us. We don't know who the good guys are. And so whether it's by Predator drone, or whether it's by attack helicopters, or whether it's by boots on the ground, we're going in, and the results speak to it. 3,000 civilians killed in 1 year. If you do the math on that, folks, that's roughly 8 Afghanis killed every day. So the 16, we're going to start seeing a ramping up of what the reality is and how many different situations have occurred that can be called into question. Of course, that probably won't happen because the court-martial of this sergeant is going to be happening behind closed doors. So the sensationalism that's normally associated with a trial of this magnitude will only be brought out to the point that the military doesn't feel it'll do the least amount of damage to the reputation of our soldiers there, who, by the way, I'm not blaming for this fiasco. This was the sergeant's 4th deployment. It's also been reported that he's having financial problems as well. The man probably should not even been in theater to begin with. But that says a lot about the pressure being put on our military, because most of these soldiers know that when they come back, if they left the military, there's only unemployment waiting for them. So anyway, I'd like to know your thoughts on that and the other things I spoke to, because once again, I'm going to ask you to go to crystalvision.com and give me your comments on what we've been speaking to, because I've gotten the limited comments I've gotten. I've actually gotten comment from an Iranian citizen whose attitude was, please make sure where you put these bombs. We really don't believe in our government any more than you do, and we'd rather not die under a hail of metal. And so I just wanted to share that with you, because once again, I want to remind you, it's not the Iranian society that's the issue, it's their reactionary government. So that's all I got to say tonight, and I'll be coming back to you with another rant probably on Monday. But until then, have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Good night.